Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Founder Wisdom Podcast. Today we have Rob Scheer. Rob is a very successful individual. He's the founder of Convert Cases, which is an amazing cause, which we're going to talk about today. Rob, welcome. You may introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Rob Scheer. I'm the founder of an international nonprofit that actually gives hope and dignity to the youth that are entering foster care. And I've got the best title in the world. I'm a dad to five of the most amazing kids.
Hmm, so sweet. I'm a dad of a little dog. I'm about to be a dad too, and a foster dad. It is definitely on my roadmap. So guess we'll be in touch for a while because this is a very long term project to adopt children's. And I mean, there's so many children's on this planet Earth. Some of them without parents. Maybe you can touch on what pushed you to found this amazing cause, this amazing nonprofit here.
Well, as my shirt says, 700 children enter foster care every single day. That's exactly one child every 2 minutes. And I
Yeah.
was one of those kids. When I was 12 years old, I entered the foster care system and I carried a trash bag with all my belongings in it. And I actually grew up in a shattered system. And when I turned
Mm.
18, I was a senior in
Mhm.
high school, and
Mhm.
instead of people celebrating the fact that I was a senior in high school, I was handed my trash bag and I became homeless. And I literally lived on the streets of Northern Virginia my entire senior year of high school. And at that time of my life, I realized that my community had failed me and that I needed to do something for myself. And that was, I was going to be successful. I was going to show all the people that thought that I wasn't going to amount to anything, the kids who actually do exit foster care can actually be something. See, we have to understand the statistics first. First, we have to know that we have over 438,000 children in foster care in the United States. And out of those 438,000 kids, they entered the system because of a choice that someone else made. We also know that only 54% of them will actually graduate from high school. And then to know that 30,000 of those kids will age out every single year, and 70% of them will become homeless, just like me. I lived on the streets my entire senior year and decided to join the
Oh,
United States Navy and make something of myself. And that's exactly what I did.
okay. I want to talk about that a little bit, but before, if we can rewind the clock, how was your life prior to 12 years old? Because I think a lot of children may relate to having a tough life. How was your life prior to 12?
I write about it in my memoir, Forever Family. My life was really hard. I'm the youngest of 10 kids. My mother had been married 6 times. We lived in and
Mm,
out of every shelter in Maryland,
mm,
Virginia, and DC. And the one thing I do remember, and it's not the picture on the wall or a Christmas tree or even a birthday
mm,
cake, but I remember the monster who lived in the house, and that was my dad. My dad was a
mm,
controlling individual who felt like his way of control was abuse, and the abuse
mm.
was pretty bad. At any given day, he would yell out for one of our names. And we knew that if we didn't run fast enough and grab the Pabst Blue Ribbon out of the refrigerator and run it to him, no matter what, we were always going to get the cherry of the cigarette put out on our leg. And that was a
Mm.
typical day in my house.
My God.
And a mother who was abused and didn't know how to protect her children. So she allowed the
Mm,
abuse to happen to us as well. So life before
mm.
the age of 12 was not any walk in the park, my friend.
How did that shape you? Did you get anything good out of it? For example, resilience?
I think the fact is that each and every one of us have grit. Grit is what we pull from the inside to push ourselves forward.
Mm.
I'm as I said, the youngest of 10 kids.
Yep.
Most of my brothers and sisters could not find that grit. They
Okay.
ended up exactly the way the system expected them to end up: teenage
Mm,
pregnancy, drug
mm,
addiction, alcoholism, incarceration. It's the constant path that we see within our child welfare system. And I just was one of those kids that looked in the mirror and said, not me. I'm going to prove to each and every one of you that I deserve better. See, every child in this world deserves to have a better life than what we
mm,
had prior to us. And I deserved that my life was going to be better than what my mother felt that her life was.
mm. Powerful stuff, man. Like I have the emotions welding up in me. Let's talk about the homeless period. I don't know what it means to be homeless. I will try some experiments pretty soon to just go on these streets and try to live a life and see what it's like to understand better that reality. But how is it like for you?
The very first couple of nights was probably the scariest nights of my life, even scarier than my father and the abuse he gave.
Okay.
Not knowing where you're going to sleep, not
Hmm.
knowing where you're going to get your next meal.
Mm.
It was scary, but I was more scared the fact that if somebody found out that I was homeless, that I would end
Mm.
up in a detention center, and
Okay.
I knew that that was worse. So every day I would go to school. I would hide my trash bag behind the bushes. I would walk in the hallway. I would hope the kids wouldn't make fun of me because I couldn't tell you the last time I'd showered or had a
Mm.
haircut. And I
Hmm.
knew that one kid would always remind me of the holes that were in the bottom of my shoes. And I would
Hmm.
wait till all the kids left the cafeteria. And then I would go over into the trash and I would gather as much food as I could in my bag as I could because I didn't know if I would eat that night. When I wasn't actually, in my school, I was sitting in the public library because
Mm.
it was my safe place. And I was sitting there and I would read every book I got my hands on because I knew even then, if I educated my mind, I could educate my future. But it also
Yep.
gave me a safe place. When I tell people about the fact that kids are homeless and that we
Hmm.
have a huge homeless population in our country, I always get the same question asked to me: where are they? I don't see them. Well, I will tell you, kids who are experiencing homelessness, they're blending in with all of us. They're at your malls, they're at your public libraries, they're in your shopping centers. They are not standing at the street corner panhandling for money. We have a
Mm.
huge homeless population of children, and it's a scary
Mm.
time because there are
Yep.
people out there that actually, have tried to do things to kids. It
Mm.
happened to me when I was a homeless boy. It wasn't unusual that the homeless kids would all gather and sleep in one place. And then the people who knew those kids were there would come and try to touch us. It wasn't
Oh my
something
God.
unusual. And for me, it was probably the darkest time of my life.
Wow. This is striking. I'm at the lack of words, but here you are today, like handsome man, successful. It's striking, right? Like what do you think? I mean, we discussed a little bit about the chip on the shoulder last time, but do you think that most people that go through those dark periods in their life end up as successful as you are today, for example?
I would love to say that they are, but we know that the statistics show that we're not.
Okay.
Um, and that's the sad part is that, first of all, I had to believe in myself. And I want to tell you that it did not happen overnight. I had my problems with drug addiction.
Okay.
I dealt with that in my life. I dealt with, thinking that I deserved to be abused. So I would gravitate towards relationships that were
Mm.
physically and mentally abusive. It's because all of
Hmm.
that's the only thing I was used to. But I will tell
Hmm.
you what happened to me. I was on my fourth drug overdose suicide attempt.
Holy shit.
And I woke up in a hospital and I realized at that moment that I had tried everything I could to end my life and it wasn't working. And I left the
Mm.
hospital and I went and found my mother's grave. I hadn't been to her grave since I was 12 years old. And I went and
Mm.
found her grave and I knelt down at her grave. She didn't even have a headstone. She had just this silver little band that had a number on it. And I
Okay.
remember kneeling down at her gravestone. I was in my early 30s. And I looked at
Mm.
it and I said, I forgive you. I forgive you.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And I forgave her and my father. And by the way, I want people to understand forgiveness is not for the person you are forgiving. Forgiveness
Exactly.
is for you to take the power back.
Hmm.
And at that moment in my life, I needed to take the power back. And I remember saying to them, I will not forget. I will not forget, but I will forgive you. And I'm forgiving you so you no longer have the power to control the where my future will go. And at that
Yeah.
moment, it's when my life completely changed. It's when
Hmm.
I'd always been career driven, but my
Okay.
career had taken off. And
Skyrocket.
I realized that drugs was not the answer and alcohol was not the answer. And, being in abusive relationships wasn't the answer. What the answer was to realize that I deserved better. And that's what I made sure happened.
Yeah, and the powerful insight here is that the person doesn't need to be in front of you. You don't need to say to the person that you forgive them in their eyes. You can tell them, you can tell them inside your psyche, they don't need to be there. Just came back from a dark room retreat this weekend, which is like you close the door and you're in the dark for 3 days meditating, doing yoga. And I forgave a bunch of people in there. And here I am, starting this week light, lighthearted and not stressed, not anxious. This is super duper powerful. And I want to talk a bit more about your career here. Uh, you've been a banker, right?
Yeah, I was a banker for 28 years. So, when I got out of the Navy, I didn't know what the hell I was going to do.
Okay.
I wasn't really given a trade. And
Hmm.
so I walked into an office. I knew how to type. I knew I was good with numbers, and I got a
Okay.
job at a bank. And the next thing you know, I started to climb the corporate ladder. And before you know it, I was an executive. And so I spent the last 15 years as an executive. Um, with offices all over the country. I lived a really good life. I live in a very big, large house because I wanted
Yeah.
you to look at it. I wanted you to say I was successful. I had the
Hmm.
chip on my shoulder. I
Hmm.
drove the expensive car because I wanted
Hmm.
you to look at it because I had the chip on my shoulder. And I also wanted to make more money than I could ever imagine spending because I had the chip on my shoulder. And then it all changed. 13 years ago, when my children arrived from foster care, carrying a trash bag, I realized that all that I cared about, my house, my money, my car, none of that mattered. None of
Hmm.
that mattered after seeing these four beautiful children that, carried a trash bag. I thought to myself, how could I be so selfish? How could I just consider me, me, me when there's a whole world out there who we need to make better and we need to
Hmm.
help them and support them? And that was a real eye opener for me. It was an eye opener to where I finally was able to say, this is my story and I own it. For so long, I had the story. I wouldn't tell it because I refused to own it because I was worried about how would you think of me? Would you truly break bread with me when you know that I was that kid that was eating out of the trash can on the street? And once my
Hmm.
children arrived, I realized I needed to be proud of where I was, but prouder of how I got to where I am. Because how could I be a role model to them if I wasn't a role model to myself?
That's powerful stuff. Again, we have a similar journey. I had the BMW, the golden watch, golden chain, and everything. And yeah, decided that this wasn't the main cause of my happiness. Now, my insight and me starting my nonprofits and wanting to do good, I think it came up somewhat in the last few years. But again, this fire is so much bigger than the short-term fire of, let's say, material things vs doing what really makes you happy and doing good. In my case, it's helping young people start businesses as soon as they can, and learn about entrepreneurship. That's what lights me up, because I wish I would have that as a younger individual that was constantly like being into problems with the system, whether it's school, whether it's police. Obviously, my problems look pretty futile next to yours, although comparison is never a good thing. But still, these things, they fire me up a lot. What does a banker do? Like it's you've done that 28 years. What exactly
28
did you
years.
do?
28
Yeah,
years. I actually ran mortgage companies. I
yeah,
actually was the person who actually provided people money to buy houses,
yeah.
to refinance their homes. And so that's what
Okay.
I did for 28 years in the banking side of the world.
Hmm.
And I loved what I did for a living, by the way. I was not only was I successful, I enjoyed my job. I am a driven person. And but when we started our nonprofit Comfort Cases 10 years ago, we started it in my conference room at my office. I never
Mm,
once thought about having a nonprofit, nor did I ever think that it would be an international nonprofit and it'd be as large
mhm,
as it is. I just
mhm,
wanted to teach my children that as leaders, and we all are leaders, we do not
yep,
have the right to sit on the sidelines and watch a game being played. Leaders get
mhm,
in the game, they play the game,
mhm,
they make sure that they're going to win. And I wanted my children to know that giving to someone is so much more rewarding than receiving. Um, and that's how it all started. We started packing cases with pajamas and toothbrushes, all the things that I wish I had when I was homeless. My own book, my own lotion, my own shampoo. I gave every kid gets a blanket. And with that, started a movement that has now delivered over 165,000 cases to all 50 states, DC,
that's a
Puerto
lot.
Rico, the United Kingdom. And we did all of this with the love of our community. But 3 years ago, when my memoir came out, I decided to leave my plush banking job because I realized that, I had filled my cup so much with that I now needed to fill my cup with something else. And now what I
Okay.
realize is that every time I see a child receive a case, every time I see a volunteer walk into our center and pack a case, no matter how bad my day is going, no matter how much stress I might have, as soon as I look into their eyes and see the joy, and it's all great. But I remind people all the time, whether you're starting a business, a nonprofit, no matter what you're doing, always remember one thing. You must fill your cup before you can fill someone else's. And that is something that I think we all forget as humans, is that we always want to fill somebody else's cup. But the problem is you need to fill your own cup. And for me, filling my cup was making sure that my children, realized that they were actually very proud of their dad. And it wasn't
Mm,
just because of the check that I would give them or the clothes that I would buy them, but they were proud because their father just didn't talk about it, that he actually did it.
hmm,
Charles, as I know the time's running low, I want to tell you something. One thing that we must remember as humans is each and every one of us are given the same exact thing. Whether we are white, black, male, female, rich, poor, gay, straight, we are all given the exact same thing in life. Walk
aye,
through your graveyards, you see it. The year you're born, your dash, and the year you die. Each
yeah.
one of us have an opportunity to make that dash shine, to make that dash the legacy that they want to leave behind. And that's what I want to do. I want my kids to walk by my dash and say, wow, my dad actually did it.
I'm fired up. Like, where do I sign up? This is great. Um, what couple of questions because yeah, I know that time is running out. This is powerful stuff, Rob. Thank you for that. Um, what skills did you transcend from banking to your nonprofit?
Oh my gosh. First of all, people ask me that quite often, and I remind them all the time. The reason our nonprofit is so successful is
Hmm.
because I run it like a business,
Okay.
exactly like I ran my businesses.
Hmm.
Number one, you have to be a people person. Number two, you have to know budgets. Number three,
Okay.
you have to understand that the consumer is the most important thing. My
Yep.
consumer has to be children in foster care. And I
Hmm.
also understand the fact that when anybody gives me a dollar, just like when I was a banker, I had to make sure that I invested that dollar so deep that it would make them more than they ever can imagine. Well, that's just like a
Okay.
nonprofit. When
Hmm.
donors come in and donate money, I need to
Hmm.
make sure that the money that they donate is not going and buying a car and it's not lavish dinners, but what it's doing is it's truly impacting our community. And remind all your listeners and viewers, your community, it is not your zip code. Here in the United States, we have zip codes for every county, for every state. That's not your community, my friends. Your community is your human race. It's your human race. And if you do not think that's correct, look at the way our world stands today. What affects each and every place affects us. And that's
Hmm.
important.
and your values make kind of your community. I very much consider myself and would describe myself as an entrepreneur, you know. Hence my community is mostly entrepreneur people that get stuff done, that take action, and that can measure these results. That's good advice. Your nonprofit, Comfort Case, which is also interesting. I mean, 165,000 cases. Like, I try to imagine that fitting in a room. You know, like that it would definitely fill the whole place here.
Oh, it
Um,
would definitely fill the whole place. The thing is that, we haven't even scratched the surface, though. That's the
yeah,
sad.
where do you want to get? Like, what are your objectives? Like, what
Well,
dent do you want to leave?
so one of the things that, as we have broaden our horizons. We're now in the United Kingdom. We're getting ready to go into Canada.
Hmm,
We are now starting to deliver at the end of the summer cases in the Bahamas. We want to be all over the world. But what we want more than anything is we want change brought into the child welfare system in all of our countries. By the way, foster care is not only here in the United States, it is everywhere. There
yep.
is orphanages, there is foster care, there is a lack of knowledge for people to think that children do not have a voice. They have a
Hmm,
voice. We
hmm,
owe them. And by the way, I remind each of you, look in a child's eyes. Look in a child's eyes. As soon as you do, guess what you see? Your future. Your
hmm,
future. And so if you do not invest in these children today, you will have to invest in them tomorrow. And the sad
hmm.
part is tomorrow is not going to be bright as today if we don't do something.
That's correct. A child that doesn't go the right route may be the criminal that stabs you 15 years later. You know, I
You,
mean that's a pretty drastic example, but
but
it
it's
can
the
be
truth.
anything. Yeah.
But Charles, it's the truth. The fact is that we know that 83% of all inmates in our prisons in the United States were kids that were either in or touched by foster care. So
Hmm,
we know that is the truth. The fact is that we have an opportunity to change that. We have an opportunity to let these children know that they matter. They
hmm,
deserve better. And by the
hmm,
way, as I said in the beginning, children enter foster care because of choices other people made. Other people
hmm,
made.
hmm.
So it's up to us to make better choices for them.
How much more minutes do you have?
I'm fine.
Okay, let's take a good like 10, 15, because I have other questions for you. This is a very interesting conversation. How how does one heal trauma as a children that's been going on and off? How does one heal trauma?
First of all, I don't think that trauma is healable. I don't think we heal from trauma.
Okay.
Even as I'm 55 years old and I have not healed from the trauma that I experienced as a child,
Mm,
what I have done is how to use certain things to navigate through my trauma. When I know
okay.
things are triggering me, how do I, what do I do? Do I need to go for a walk? Do I need to, maybe meditate? There's so many different things. I will tell you, I love my therapist. I go to therapy. Um,
Me too.
it truly helps me through my trauma, but I don't
Hmm.
believe that there's anything. If I just don't believe there's healing of trauma. It's how do we cope with it and how do we deal with it and how do we get through our lives as healthy as we possibly can, knowing that we've had trauma.
Is there an educational aspect to comfort cases? You told me that you leave books in there. Are you thinking to use education to empower these childrens?
First of all, I will tell this to everyone. There are two things that will actually help children. Number one, financially set them up for success. We should be
Hmm.
opening up an interest bearing savings account for every child that enters foster care. So when they
Okay.
do age out, that they have a safety net. And number two, we need to open up the education pathways. I dreamed of the day that I would walk into a college. I dreamed of the day for a higher education. No one ever
Hmm,
gave me that. No one ever
hmm.
ever offered me that opportunity. So I'm a kid who doesn't know the difference between there, and there. I've learned everything on my own, but I do believe that education could truly change the gap that we needed to change.
And how comfort case is gonna impact that feel? Or do you guys have planned to have put up some educational programs?
So we actually do already, by the way. So we
Okay.
actually we give out a couple of scholarships every year
Hmm.
to kids
Okay.
who are aging out of the system. We believe that that is so important. But we also, and I spend a lot of my time talking to politicians, trying to shake the tree up to get people to
Okay.
listen, to see the small things that we could do, the low hanging fruit that could truly make an impact on us.
Do these children have smartphone? Most of them, like let's say that say they're 12. Do they have smartphones with them?
No, no, they don't have
No,
them like our kids have them, not as many. No, it's
because
that is the hardest part because, it's let's look at the fact that kids in foster care aren't getting driver's license like kids
mhm,
who are come from a traditional family.
okay,
Senior pictures don't happen, proms don't happen, birthday parties don't happen, camps don't happen, sports don't happen. There is such a
hmm,
depriving level
holy man,
that these kids deal with. So no, it's
hmm,
not happening. My son, he arrived at the age of 18, and he didn't get his phone until he was 17 years old. My
okay,
youngest son, and some of you can disagree with me, he's had his phone since he was 12. But so yeah, the kids in foster care are the forgotten children. And talk about feeling disposable, feeling invisible. Be a child in foster care. That's exactly how you feel.
because as a technologist, I don't know, I'd give them, some kind of iPod Touch, and I'd put an app in there that would help them navigate through changes, some kind of meditation saying, hey, you will go through many houses, you'll have to manage your emotions, and kind of have them focus on their breath as well. Meanwhile, I'd certainly do that for them. And then the sport thing, it really stroked me because I'm, a sports addict. I do sports twice a day. I do Ironmans, and sports is an integral part of my life. And for children, it can help them cope them through various changes, through tough times. Just through the secretions of some chemicals when they activate their body, keep them healthy and stuff. What would be a solution for them to practice more sports?
It's not what's the solution, it's the funding. You
Okay.
know, that's the biggest issue is that foster families, are not enrolling kids. These kids are moving around so much, they don't have an opportunity to be in sports.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to, all types of meditation and things like that, I mean, they're barely trying to get through their day with the trauma that they've dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
We have to realize that it is so, so important that we do wraparound services for these kids as soon
Mm-hmm.
as they enter foster care before the anger starts.
So the step one, I guess, before meditation would be a therapist so that they can physically show up
Very
and.
first thing, I don't care how a child ended up in the system. Every single child, as soon as they enter the system, needs to have therapy. Start immediately.
Hmm.
Immediately.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. This is really interesting. Rob, well, I think we're pretty much wrapping around here. I'll just let you the stage and call people to action here.
Perfect. Well, thank you, my friend. Listen, thank you for having me. Please keep in touch. Let's connect soon.
Yeah, and everyone go visit Comfort Case's website. Rob is obviously on LinkedIn. He's on Twitter. He's on Instagram. Have beautiful pictures with his family. Rob, congrats on everything. Thank you for making an impact. Thank you for taking care of people that society don't want to take care of, and thank you for making us aware of all that. You're making a great service to humanity, my friend.
Thank you, my friend. Have a great
All right,
day. Take care.
have
Bye
a great
bye.
day. Bye.